So we're going to do, we're live. Okay, fantastic. So first of all, good evening and thank you so much for joining me. My name is Saj Hussain. I'm here every Monday evening at 8:30 p.m. for about half an hour to answer your questions around investing in property. So whatever questions you've got for me about property investing, put them in the comment section, whatever platform you're watching on. We're live on a few different platforms. So we're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. So whichever platform you're watching on, pop a question in the comment section and I'll do my very best to get those questions answered for you. We've already got a few questions that have come through. We'll start with those first. And then, as I said, if you've got a question, make sure you pop it in because I always get messages afterwards saying I didn't answer their question. And the reason being is because we don't get around to it, because I just try and answer the question in the order that they appear. So my lovely assistant, Cal, in the background is going to pop the questions up and we'll get started with the first question in just a moment. So thank you so much for that. So our first question this evening is on YouTube. So hi Saj, how would you get an estimate for GDV when building a new house to sell with no new builds in the area of 3 miles? Thanks. So that's a great question. So when you're getting started, let's say you're doing new build projects and you're doing developments, it's all based on what's the end value. What's it going to be worth at the end once it's all finished? Whether you're going to refinance to keep it or whether you're going to sell it on. Ultimately, you need to know what it's going to be worth at the end. Now, so people also talk about this as comparables. So that's finding other properties and finding what they're worth. Now, if you have nothing to compare it against, then that's going to be a little bit of a concern because how are you going to work out what's it going to be worth? So you could go maybe this, and some of the estate agents might end up also doing that because if that's what they're also based on comparables, and if there aren't any in place, then you've got to go by the next best thing. So for example, similar properties, what are they selling for? What are they typically per square foot, for example, in terms of the space available? So going a little bit further out, what are they worth, or other similar areas like this one? So if you've got no comparables at all, then it's definitely going to be a challenge. But I would go with whatever you can as a guide. Personally, I would be quite cautious about doing a project like that if you're going to create something where you haven't got the comparables, because when you, even if you come to sell the property and the buyer comes to do this purchase survey and the surveyor comes out, if they haven't got comparables, they're going to be struggling as well. So there might be some disagreements around what something is worth. So that could put you in quite a vulnerable position in terms of not knowing what the end GDV was or not being able to pin it to something solid. So that's that would be my thoughts on that. I personally, I'd be quite cautious about doing a project like that. So we'll get our next question up in a moment. Instagram, I think the connection is not so great, so let me know you can see and hear me okay. It's got Instagram just over here. So our next question this evening is also on YouTube from DGF. My landlord is willing to offer my rented 2-bed, 2-bath, separate kitchen maisonette flat for 240k, and my valuer says he can get me an immediate sale at 255k. In your, if it just popped back a little bit there, I think it's jumped the question. In your opinion, is it worth the hassle? So make sure I just understood that. Okay, the flat is also has the potential to be converted to 2 large rooms with bath, a HMO, plus if I invested a bit more to convert the loft into a master and the 3 rooms HMO, which will be better ROI in your opinion. So just flip back to the first part of the question, please, Cal. Landlord is going to offer. Okay, so if I've understood this correctly, you're renting the property at the moment as a tenant, and the landlord who owns the property is willing to sell you the property at price A, and your valuer thinks it's worth price B. At the end of the day, you have to work out whether you're keeping the property or you're going to sell the property. If you're going to sell the property, then really the person buying it is going to determine what it's worth because it's what somebody's prepared to pay for it. So a valuer, for example, you need to think who is that valuer. If it's an estate agent, well, really then generally their figure is a marketing appraisal. What that means is that's what they think that you should guide it at in the marketplace to be able to sell it. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're going to achieve. And if it's a RICS surveyor doing the valuation, let's say on behalf of a lender, they think that's what it might be worth to be able to put a mortgage against it. So you have to think about what's that valuer that's doing that valuation for you estate agent versus Rick's surveyor. And also the margin seems very, very tight there. There's not a huge amount in it. So you've got to take into consideration purchase costs. So for example, if you're purchasing with let's say a mortgage, you'll have stamp duty to pay as well. You have your solicitor's costs. You'll have a mortgage product fee, a valuation fee, possibly product fees as well for the mortgage. You may have fees that you need to pay for the lender solicitor even. I'm just trying to remember all the costs. And so you've got quite a lot of costs involved in that transaction, and what we call transactional costs. So you've got the purchase, then you've got to hold it, and then you might be selling it on. Well, actually, for the figures that you've mentioned, I think there may be very little profit in that. And if you're purchasing it to keep, well, you might be getting a little bit of a discount, but then ultimately you got to think about if you're keeping it, what's the cash flow you can generate. So if you've got an angle on a HMO, you think it would work better as a HMO, you get better cash flow, better end value. That's what I would probably think about, and that's the route that I would probably take. I'd say there probably isn't very much profit in it to be able to buy and sell it, particularly when taking into consideration of the transactional costs as well that you've got to consider. So I hope that helps. So our next question this evening is on YouTube from Phil. Hi, I hope you're keeping well. Would you buy a house to rent outright, or buy two houses and put half down and get a mortgage on the other half, all through a limited company? Okay, so just so I've understood the question, Phil, is essentially what you're saying to me. Say, let's use some numbers. Let's say, for example, we had £100,000 in cash. Would I purchase a property for £100,000 and not have any mortgage against it? Or would I split that into two pots and effectively put £50,000 into each property and maybe have a mortgage against it? So when you have got a mortgage against it, I know some people don't necessarily want to take a mortgage, don't want to get involved in interest. But if you are taking a mortgage and you're happy to take a mortgage, yes, there's some risk involved in terms of you've got some borrowing, you've got some leverage there. But ultimately, what you're doing, you've got some gearing, like borrowing. But what you're able to do is leverage up. So what that means is that your long-term capital growth on that property that you might achieve. Let's say you bought two of them. They're £100,000 each. You've put £50,000 into each one. You've borrowed £50,000 from the bank. So they're only 50% geared. They're only borrowed up to half the value. So let's say in 10 years' time, the property is worth £200,000. It may be, it may not be. But let's just use the arbitrary number. They're worth £200,000 each. Because you've now got two of them, you've got a total value in your portfolio of £400,000 because they're now worth £200,000 each. You've got your £100,000 equity that you started with, and you've got £100,000 you borrowed from the bank. But now you've got £200,000 of equity profit that you've created within that deal. Versus if you just had the one property that you paid £100,000 for with no borrowing, and if it was worth £200,000, you've only made £100,000. So, and if you took that one step further and say you put £25,000 into four properties, you can start seeing the power of leverage, and which is where really you can benefit from by taking borrowing against a property in that way. That would be the benefit there. And of course, it's about personal preferences, but and your objectives in terms of what overall you're trying to do and you're trying to achieve. But in this particular example, what you're doing is, if you're looking to get maximum capital growth over time, the more properties you have, the more capital growth you will benefit from. So I hope that helps with that. Let's see what our next question is. Our next question is on LinkedIn from Aman. Hi Saj, have you got any available deals in Birmingham? What are your thoughts on letting to housing associations on a guaranteed rent scheme in Birmingham? So thank you for the question. So in terms of deals, just to give a little bit background and context. So when I first started getting involved in properties about 15 years ago, about first 2 years or so, I really struggled to get any kind of success. I was just trying lots and lots of different things, but not really getting a result. And what happened was, once I got clarity, and really it was through the guidance of a mentor and support, that I got focused on doing one specific thing, and that was sourcing. I started finding deals, and I started selling those deals on. So that time, for a number of years, I was finding deals and selling them on, and the market was also in a very different place in Birmingham at that time as well. So then at that time, there was much more stock in the marketplace than there were buyers. So it was easy to cherry pick out the deals and be able to pass them on. Then since probably 2014, the market started to change in Birmingham. Prices starting to go up quickly, a lot more demand, a lot of growth, a lot of change in the Birmingham market. It probably started a little bit earlier than that, but by 2014, it really had built some momentum. So at that time, I really stopped selling deals to other people because we were just cherry picking out deals for ourselves. And my belief has always been, look, if a deal is not good enough to acquire ourselves, we shouldn't be offering to somebody else. I know some people, they'll go out and source properties, they'll pick the best deals, and they'll effectively sell the crap on to other people. And I think that's the best way to get a bad reputation in this business. So the deals should be good quality deals. And because there isn't the volume there, we've not really sourced and we don't really sell on. So deals that we now find, we tend to keep, and I tend to partner with people. By that, what I mean is I use my time, skill, and experience. I find the property investment opportunities, and then I partner with other people who fund those deals. So when people say to me, "What's a good lead for you? What do I look for? Why do I do these videos and all the content I do online?" And the reason is, I'm quite happy to share my knowledge and experience to help other people. And ultimately, there's two things that I'm looking for. One is I'm looking for people who might have the funds to maybe come and invest with me. They lend money for projects, or we partner in projects. It tends to be a minimum of at least £50,000 that they get involved with me in that way in the projects. Or alternatively, it may be that somebody wants some help in terms of implementing some of the knowledge and to build their property business further by the way of a mentor. So they're really the two things that I can help people with, and people reach out to me for. And hence why I'm quite happy to share my knowledge and experience in this way. So your question about selling deals on, is the case we don't really sell deals. I tend to just keep them or partner with people who fund the deals. The other part of your question was regards to housing associations. Now, in Birmingham, this is a little bit more complex. I say complex in the sense that if you can get a lease directly with the housing association, then I think you could be in a very, very good position. But generally speaking, and from my understanding the way it works, and just to be clear, I'm not very big on social housing. My core business in terms of rental tends to be HMOs to professional lets. That's our core portfolio. Although we get involved in lots of different types of property investing, our core business is a HMOs professional lets. So the social housing, often you're sitting, it's in like a tiered system. You're sitting underneath other people, and your lease is not direct with the housing association. So that's the thing that I would check for. And I think if you can get a commercial type arrangement, a commercial lease, insuring or pairing lease with the housing association, I think that can be a good model as long as the numbers work. So Aman, I hope that helps and give you some pointers there. So thank you for that question. Our next question is after this question, I'll take one on Instagram. I think I've got one Instagram on the screen over there, so I'll take that in a moment. So Segan's question is, hi Saj, what extra value does a corner plot add to a property percentage-wise? I'd say, Segan, it's difficult to give a percentage and say it will be worth this much more. It just depends on what its potential is. And potential is exactly that. It's potential. It means it could be utilized. It could be benefited. Now, some people might just want the bigger plot because they want a bigger garden. Some people might want it because they can park more cars on the drive. Some people might be interested in it because they can extend it, possibly put a side extension on or a two-story extension on, make it much bigger, much wider than it is. So it has potential value, but I certainly wouldn't be looking at any type of percentage increase. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable if someone said to me, oh, this house is worth X, and because this is a corner plot, is worth X% more than the other one. I certainly would not be looking at it in that way. I'd say, yes, it has potential, but if it went a step further and had planning permission, depending what that planning permission was and what value that was to somebody, because remember, it still hasn't been built, and what potential value that has to somebody, that you could start trying to increase its value. So I'd say it's like saying, I've spotted a plot of land, what's it worth? Well, it depends on what could be done with it, but it's very difficult to say it's worth as a percentage more than another one. So I hope that helps. So let's see if we can take one of these questions from Instagram. This one is from Lord Ramiz. Hi Saj, with Article 4 HMOs in Birmingham, isn't easy to get planning permission for HMOs. What can we do to minimize the risk of being rejected? Local authority isn't exactly the most clue. So thank you for that. So straining my eyes, I'm getting a little bit old now trying to read that. So So with Birmingham becoming Article 4 in June, essentially what that means is we can't now create new HMOs without going through planning permission. Of course, unless you're doing social housing, because social housing is considered exempt and it doesn't need to go through the same process of licensing or planning permission. So that's another reason why there's an increase of property in that way. Now, Birmingham are doing this thing where they're setting some guidelines. Actually, I don't have it to hand here. But I could probably dig it out, and if you ping me a DM, I'll send you the details. Where what they're trying to do is they're trying to avoid properties, I think, being about 100 meters within each of each other, not having two HMOs wedging a family house in between. So they're setting some guidance in terms of what they want to do. This is planning. But it doesn't mean that's a done deal, that's it, that they would accept everything in that place. My personal view is I think it's a little bit early. There needs to be some test cases to see how these applications are going through, whether they're considering them, whether they're rejecting most of them. And I think there'll be certain areas where it will be much more difficult because there's already lots of them in the area. So, for example, in Birmingham, you've got your Edgbaston, Selly Oaks, Erdington, places like that, where there's already lots and lots of HMOs, some really good ones and some really, really bad ones. But the council, I suspect, planning will be more reluctant to allow more in those areas where, for example, you've got very few HMOs. Say, for example, like Hall Green, just a handful. You've got much more likelihood of being able to get approval there. But the other thing you also have to look at is, depending on the type of tenants you're looking for, there's certain areas that are established and well known for this type of accommodation, so you've got plenty of demand from tenants as well. If you go up venturing into a new area that's untested, uncharted territory, you don't know what the tenant demand will be like, so you have to do a little bit more work in terms of making sure that that works quite well. So there's a few areas that we're trialing and testing at the moment, so watch your space, and I'm happy to share later on once we get some momentum with those. But we are trialing different areas as well ourselves, rather than just sticking to the essential ones. So I hope that helps. If you're finding this useful, why don't you share this video with a friend? It's always great to be able to get this out to more people, and I appreciate you taking your time to watch this evening. So we're here till 9 o'clock, so we'll do some more questions. So let's get the next question on screen then, Cal. What have we got next? So next one's from Jamie on YouTube. Hi Saj, I have a HMO fully licensed, bedrooms without en-suites but not as large as the reception rooms. Can I switch the rooms and put in en-suites into the reception rooms? Planning required. Let me just reread that so I've understood that. Without en-suite but not as large as the reception room, can I switch? Yeah, okay, I think I've understood. So essentially what I think you want to do is you want to swap. You might move, for example, your lounge maybe moved up onto the first floor, and your bedroom might come down and occupy what is maybe one of the reception rooms right now. There's actually nothing stopping you from doing that. If it's a licensed HMO, you need to let licensing know that you rejigged it effectively, a new floor plan. But if it's still fully compliant, I don't see any issue with doing that whatsoever. You've got to think about the practicalities as well. When people are living in that house, how do they feel about sort of what we might call upside down living, for example, sleeping on the ground floor, reception rooms on the first floor. It feels a little bit odd, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a little bit different, and some people might just find that a bit strange. Personally, I would do that. We've got kitchens on the first floor, for example. We've got bedrooms on the ground floor in certain houses. All depends on the house. And the type of tenants out there. As long as you can create a really nice environment, there's no reason why that wouldn't work well. So Jamie, hope that helps. So if you're watching on Instagram, apologize, I think the connection is not brilliant for some reason today, so please bear with us. Thank you for that. So what's the next question we've got then, Carl? Next one is on YouTube, is Alan. Hi Saj, do you do mentoring? Are you able to say how much it costs? Yes, Alan, I do mentoring, and I call it mentoring as opposed to training or coaching, because essentially what that means is really you're getting guidance and support from me in implementation of knowledge. So we do we have essentially 3 levels. We call it startup, speed up, and scale up within the program. The startup for those people that are brand new who also need some knowledge input as well to be able to help them with that. And I deliver that with my colleague Sam Cooper. We deliver that together and support people on that. The scale up program, sorry, the speed up program is the one that I tend to deliver myself, and that's really about understanding what it is that you want to achieve, working out a plan of action, how we're going to do that, and then over 12 months, me and the team supporting you in the implementation of that and guiding you through that. Because essentially that's what mentoring would be. Mentoring is giving you the guidance and the support to ultimately get the results. I've been involved in lots of different programs where I've both delivered, been part of the programs where I'm delivering the support, training, and mentoring, and also as an attendee where I'm benefiting as being one of the people within the program as well. Some have been absolutely fantastic, and some maybe not so great. But ultimately, I think it's about getting results. And if you're in an environment which is leading to help you get the results that you're ultimately looking for, that's what it's about. But I think there's too many programs which are just general, where the objectives are something much more broad, which might not really fit in with somebody's needs. And that's why what I tend to prefer to do is mentoring, which is much more personalized. And in terms of investment, it varies from about £6,000 going up to £20,000 investment, and that includes VAT. It just depends on the type of program, and it's not for everybody. And it's really for somebody who's going to be committed and dedicated to putting the work in to get the results, and my job is going to be supporting you through that. And if that's something you're interested in, just ping me a message on whichever platform you're watching on, and we'll get in touch and we can have a chat about that. So what's the next question that we have, Cal? So the next one is on YouTube. Sunil, hi Saj, what is the best boiler and how many tank cylinder sizes also, please, would be necessary for a 6-bedroom HMO that has 4 en-suites and additional common bathroom shared by 2 people? Sunil, great question, but I have no idea. I say I have no idea because I tend not to get involved in the detail. I have a number of people in the team where we design the layouts of the houses, what equipment we're going to be using. We tend to use mega flows. Most of our houses are 6-bedroom as opposed to 4. We tend to use mega flows. We have en-suites in all the rooms as well. I'm not quite sure the size of the cylinders and the boilers that we use. If you ping me a message or a DM, I'll try and get some general information to you of the sort of stuff that we would use. But this has come from trial and error. We've been doing HMOs for more than 10 years now, and our houses that we roll out now are very, very different from the ones that we did 10 years ago. As I said, it's all come from experience of what we find works quite well. So I'm happy to kind of send that information to you, but I don't have it to hand because I don't really get involved in that. So should we have another look question on? We'll do this one, then we'll have another look on Instagram. I think I've got a few more questions here. Instagram, if you want me to answer your question, I think I've got quite a few here actually. Cal, I don't know if you can maybe copy and paste it into this screen here to stop me from squinting and trying to read the questions. So if you want to flash that one back up, was it Shabnam? And then I'll answer this one while you have a look at the Instagram one. Thank you. So Shabnam's question on YouTube is, what advice would you give a 21-year-old with 100K saved up for property investing? So Shabnam, you're in a very fortunate position. You've got 100 grand as a starting point, but ultimately it's about what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? So what's the purpose of investing? What is it that you're trying to get from property investing? And the more clarity you have around that, the easier it is to put together a plan of what about the right way to do it. I'm really not a big fan of people that give general advice and say, yes, you all need to do this. This is what you need to do. This is the way to succeed in property, because it's very different from everybody. Not everybody will find a certain model that will work for them, because there's lots of factors to consider. So for instance, how much time are you going to be able to put into this business? What experience are you already coming with? Property experience, business experience. You've got some funds to start with, which is fantastic. Depending on where you're based in the country also has an impact. Whether you're based in Stoke-on-Trent or you're based in Zone 2 in London, the prices are going to be massively different. So thinking about the location, about where you're investing, also the economic cycle. So right now we're in this really strange time where we're in a recession, where property prices seem to be rising. We're in like a little bit of a property boom. So it's really strange time of where we are in the economic cycle as well. And is it cash flow you're trying to create? Is it long-term capital growth to replace an income maybe in the future, or to replace an income now? Is to create an additional income? Is it to leave a legacy? All these factors really have to be considered and thought about before you think about which is going to be the right one for you. So let's give you some general answers. So if you are looking for cash flow, i.e. a certain level of income each month, then I'd be looking for the highest cash flow strategies. And often they tend to be HMOs and service accommodation. Yes, those strategies are more work. but you know, the returns are fantastic as well. And then, you know, if you're looking for longer term capital growth, i.e. it might be a pension, you're thinking, I don't need these funds right now, this is going to be for the long term, to be able to supplement an income, or when I retire, or for the family, or whatever it might be. If you're thinking of it from that perspective, then it may be, so for example, it could be that, you know, I don't know, you know, excuse me, anything about your personal circumstances, but, you know, for example, a junior doctor, you know, trainee accountant, they'll be on a significant salary in a few years' time, and then maybe they don't actually need the money right now, but they're trying to build up something for the longer term. In that case, I'd be thinking about which areas are likely to get the best capital growth. Now, we can't predict these. None of us have a crystal ball. We don't know exactly where those areas are going to be, but there are certain things that we can look at and set indicators that we can follow to give us an idea what sort of areas work better. So, for example, you know, the cheapest areas are not necessarily the best ones to invest for in the long-term capital growth. Sometimes you get the nicer areas and the slightly more up-and-coming areas, or the ones adjacent to the better areas, they'll tend to come up in price much more. So, for example, in Birmingham, we find the price in the south rise a lot quicker than ones in the north over time. So, the longer-term investing would be where you're going to get better capital appreciation, as well as we're talking about maybe splitting the pot up and investing across several different properties, so you get the growth of several properties as opposed to just one. So I get that question asked quite a lot: what advice would I give somebody starting out? And my answer is often very similar. It's really difficult to give you exact advice because it depends on so many different things, but primarily what you're trying to achieve. And, you know, to work out which is going to be the best route to get there. So I hope that helps. So Cal, we're going to get the next question up for us. So this one's from Instagram. Thank you. So Pinnacle of it. What do you think is the best way for meet a 22-year-old for investing 150k into real estate? What do you think is the best way for me at? Okay, so you're typing there, Cal. Flash that back up again, please. So what do you think is the best way for me at 22-year-old to invest 150k into real estate? So I think that's going to be very similar to the question I just answered, but I think it's for Shabnam. Be pretty much exactly the same answer. You know, ultimately, what is it you're trying to achieve in the long term? What's the objectives? You know, how much time you're going to have into this? What experience you've got? What mortgageability you have? What other funds you might be able to raise? Where you are in the country as well. You know, where you want to invest versus where you live as well. All these factors have to be considered. You know, I have some videos on my YouTube channel which I really go into this in a lot more detail. I encourage you to have a look at those. And if you're still struggling, reach out to me and, you know, let's see what we can do to help you with those. How are we doing for time? We're good for time at the moment, a few more minutes. So Cal, what have you got next for us? So the next one is on YouTube, which is Chan. House to flat. Should lease for each flat be created, as this will enable me to get 2 mortgages as opposed to one for the freehold, we may get lower valuation, one to obtain maximum remortgage valuation? So this is a really good question. So thank you so much for asking the question. So here we need to think about what are you trying to achieve. What you're looking to try and do is get the maximum valuation, what the maximum value is. So it's a little bit like wholesaling and retailing. You're breaking up the components. So you've got a house that's been split into 2 flats. When I say split into 2 flats, you're using them as 2 flats. But actually, to get the maximum value, you need to mortgage them and value them individually to get the maximum values of what they're worth. If you keep them collective together, the 2 flats, then the valuations tend not to be as much, and it can vary depending on the lenders or surveyors. But, you know, around 15%-ish is probably not that far off in terms of the difference you might have between them together and then separated out. Many other factors considered, but it's a very broad brush indication. And the reason for that is because if you've got 2 flats, let's say they've got 100-year leases set up correctly, and then if the properties ever got repossessed and the bank needed to resell them, they'll be very easy to resell, you would think, because there's a market there for those. However, if you had 2 flats combined into 1 freehold, and then that was repossessed and being sold, 2 flats together, then it's a much more limited market in terms of who would buy that property and generally be investors, and they'll probably pay a lower price, which is why you tend to find that you get a lower price. And mortgaging freehold flats tend to be more difficult as well than leaseholds. And of course, you've got to think about the structure as well. So for example, you might own the freehold in your personal name, but the leases might be in a company. For instance, you can't own the freeholds and the leases in the same entity, because the freehold owns the whole thing. The lease is essentially a rental contract for, like, say, 100 years to be able to use that building. So you can't rent it to yourself. It doesn't make sense. So that's why you have two separate entities to do that. So I hope that helps. We're at 9 o'clock. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Camilla just popped up on Facebook. I just spotted the phone behind you. Oh yes, that's my first mobile Motorola 8500. Probably nearly 30 years ago that I had that phone. So my first mobile, and that's this way. That's my first pound earned in business many years ago. So thank you for that, Camilla. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and watching. I'll be back here next Monday at 8:30 to answer your property investing questions. And remember, if you're looking for more help, you'd want me to help and support you through what you're doing, just again, reach out to us if you're interested in investing with me in projects that we're doing. I've got lots of examples of the stuff that we do on our YouTube channel. Have a look and reach out, and I'm happy to have a chat and explore how we can work together. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you again here next Monday evening.